friends and neighbors. Welcome in the light, where laughter's the answer and hearts are shining bright. With calloused hands and wits, so raise your sharp. Let's praise a place where love ignites the spark. In the field of dreams where sweat and hope combine, we'll raise our voices high and toast to the divine. Be your best and let your spirit always rise. Give thanks for every moment under sunny skies. Be the sunny side of someone else's life. Share your light and joy through struggle and strife. Keep your heart open and your soul always bright. Together we will share this sunny side life. Be the sunny side of someone else's life. Share your light and joy through struggle and strife. Keep your heart open and your soul always bright. Together we will share this sunny side life.
Hello, friends and neighbors, and welcome to the fourth season of the Sunny Side of Life with me, Troy Thompson. 4 seasons? Really, just the beginning of the third year. If you remember the Bible in a year, that was 2 seasons in one. But we're on to the 4th season already. Life, liberty, and the pursuits which make us happy, which you'll be seeing more of in the very near future this March, and we'll start posting videos of the projects that we've got going on, and maybe you'll enjoy that. I'll just keep it to the audio though here on the Sunny Side of Life, because I like it. Plus, I'm not sure you're ready to see this mug. It's not that great anyway. What I want to talk about today is something that you've probably been aware of if you've been paying to the attention to the news whatsoever. Is there is a deal, of course, now between Ukraine and the United States. Zelensky and Trump have decided that they can move forward with things, which you kind of knew was going to happen the entire time. And but since their meeting on what was it, Friday? Was it Friday? I think it might have been. Yeah, it was Friday, and just did not go well for lunch at the White House on Friday. And so lots of things in the news about the meeting between Vladimir Zelensky and Donald Trump, and Vice President J.D. Vance was there. Marco Rubio. There's a lot of people in the White House there, and they were all there for it. So I thought, I had a conversation with my son Friday night. My oldest boy, Tate, he's a lawyer in Kansas City. He called me, and this is what he wanted to talk about. He wanted to talk about, what in the world we thought about this thing. Like the sky is falling, which a lot of people thought that the sky is falling because Donald Trump just ruined it with the powerful nation of Ukraine, empowered the world's great power of Russia, and made Putin look good. And probably a lot of people have thought that Donald Trump is just a pawn of Vladimir Putin. I always get a kick out of it when people say that anybody else is a pawn of the Russians. It's so ridiculous to me. A lot of we've been doing this Russia thing for like 8 years now, and it's getting pretty old. And it hasn't been true since the beginning. But they keep pushing it, and it seems like it's coming from the weirdest section of politics in the United States, because these are the most socialist people in America, and you would think that they would love the Soviet Socialist Republic more than anybody else, and as much as, well, maybe not as much as Vladimir Putin does, because that is what the deal is with Putin, is that he is not a paper tiger. That is not what he is. Russia's a very powerful country, and they are a slash and burn style military. Always have been, always will be. They would rather go to the ash pile than not be respected. But that's really the problem of Europe. For the last 400 or 500 years, Europe has treated Russia like the poor cousins, and not quite up to snuff with whatever Europeans are. And the Russians have never appreciated that. They were in love with the French, like a lot of people were for some reason. And they just really, like the Tchaikovsky's 1812 Overture, that was just a big homage to the French. and they just loved French culture, and they were related. They were all related, prior to World War II. They were, and World War I. They're just all the royalties. They're all related somehow, probably unhealthily, and Russia's just the only time that Russia truly had worldwide respect was when they were the great evil threat of the Soviet Union. And Vladimir Putin remembers that quite well, enjoyed it, longs for it, in fact, and just wants to have the Russian Republic respected as the Soviet Union once was. Of course, Soviet Union was, outside the military, they were a paper tiger as well. Financially, they couldn't handle it. Socialism doesn't work. Communism doesn't work. Everybody knows this except people who are apparently just recently, in and out of college or whatever they're studying. But everybody knows that communism doesn't work. Socialism doesn't work. And the nations that were communists, that fought so hard, like Vietnam and even China and places like, Slovakia, right? These are socialist nations. Socialism is the way that you get to communism, the economic system, and it doesn't work. In fact, they have to move to capitalist enterprises in order for them to prop up their economies. And yet Europe itself, who fought a war against the National Socialists, right? Everybody uses the term Nazis, which was just the American shorthand version of Nationalsozialistische Arbeiterpartei. It just means the National Socialist Workers Party. So that sounds very socialist, Democrat socialist to me. When you say National Socialist Democrat Socialist Workers Party, that's what Nazi was short for. And so it's funny how people don't know a lot about history, and then they get things flipped around, and then they always go back to World War II, which, by the way, we wouldn't have won World War II if it hadn't been for the Russians. We love to take credit, make lots of movies about it and everything like that, but the Russians were fighting the war the whole time. They were taking care of the entire Eastern Front by themselves, and they had no love lost with Japan, because there was this whole Russo-Japanese war at the beginning of the 20th century. And so there's a lot going on here, and for all of that, Europe is under siege by Germany and those Nazi bastards, and the United States comes rolling in came in 1942, started going to Africa and whatnot, and we were in Italy, obviously, like that, and we always looked at D-Day, which is 1944, and the war is over in the spring of 1945. So the Russians were fighting the whole time, and they are slashing Earth down to the last bullet, the last bean. And so had it not been for we had 600,000 Americans that paid the price, the ultimate price in World War II, and the Russians had millions. It's not funny, but it's such a completely different thing. And so then there was this moment where they were stupid communists. The Soviet system would never work, but they felt pretty good about victory, and they came out of it, and they were pretty upset that they had to spend whatever treasure they thought they had and manpower to do these, to fight Germany on the entire eastern side, and all of the other countries, including the United States, are coming in from the west and the south a little bit, and all this other stuff, and they just still not a ton of credit, but they were Soviets. They picked the wrong system, and yet the rest of Europe. The rest of Europe since World War II basically becomes socialist, right? They got all their welfare states. They're held up by people like Bernie Sanders as the way to do business, and education is free and healthcare is free, and this is what people say who love spending other people's money. It's free. Somebody else is paying for it, and we're going to take their money with a gun and make sure that they do pay for it so that we can give you gifts. And it's still the rest of Europe, the Western European, including, is more socialist than Nazi Germany ever was, and so. They could be, because the United States of America, since the end of World War II, has pretty much made sure that, they don't get destroyed by the great Russian horde that would come across with their tanks across Europe and roll them over. But what they wanted was a buffer zone. That was always their deal. Russia needed a buffer zone between the people of Europe who did not respect or appreciate what the Russians had done or who they were. And I'm not making excuses for Russia. Vladimir Putin is a dictator. I don't have a problem saying that. But I'm also not making a deal with Russia. So don't be an idiot and say, why wouldn't Trump just agree with Zelensky and call him a dictator and say nasty things about him? And I'm 100% on your side, because that's not how you get a deal done between two parties. But we'll come back to that in a second. So anyway, my explanation to my oldest boy Tate is just like, look, there's a whole lot of things going on here. There's no way that you can make Zelensky look real terrible in front of his own people. And there's no reason that Zelensky and the Ukrainians should have, there's no reason that they should say anything good about Putin or Russia. There's a lot of bad blood for good reason there. They do not owe Trump. Zelensky doesn't owe Trump or the people of the United States or Europe or anything. They do not owe a kind nod to their enemy in Russia. They do not owe that to anybody. They're enemies. And that's okay. That's understandable. So we need to just back a little bit off of Zelensky in that situation, because he's allowed to hate Putin. He's allowed to hate Russia for what they did to his country. Russia did invade Ukraine. That's a problem. Now, when one powerful country rolls into another country that's not as powerful, and they make war, right, wrong, or indifferent, and in this case, I would say not right. Right? It was wrong for Russia to do that. Russia rolls into Ukraine, takes the Donbass region, and Ukraine fights like hell against a foreign invader. And we're all like, when it first started, this is 3 years ago. I was like, yeah, this is go Ukraine. And remember, people were I didn't do this because I don't, do the social media nonsense. It changes from moment to moment. I can't keep up with it, but people were posting Ukrainian flags and they were all for Ukraine. And they had, all of that stuff. And it's like, yeah, well, we're all for Ukraine being able to succeed against, an invading army. And for a while they did pretty good. They were putting up quite a fight. And then they naturally had to go around and ask for support from Europe, which they got, and the United States, which they got, to the tunes of $350 billion. It's incredible. As my wife says, that's 1,000 million 350 times over, which is insane amount of money. And it is. And I think where we're at now is where Trump would say, he said it when he was running for office again, and that he was gonna end this war. He's gonna find a way to end this war. And I truly believe, and he said time and time again, he wants to be a peacemaker, and he's a deal maker, and all of that. And I think that is true. And I had really no doubt or concern that what the result was on Friday afternoon last week was that there was going to be a deal. And as upset as Zelensky might have been, or as embarrassed as some people in the United States may have felt that meeting went, a few things had to happen here. One, Zelensky had to be able to show the people of Ukraine that he is not going to bend the knee necessarily and say things he doesn't want to say. And you give it to Zelensky; he's always pretty much said what the people of Ukraine reflect. And Trump keeps saying that Zelensky doesn't have a good approval rating. He's got a 4% approval rating. Well, that's asinine. That's ridiculous. And we know that Trump does, he makes things up and he speaks hyperbolically and all of that stuff. And Zelensky's got a fine approval rating, and they haven't had elections. So people are upset about it. He can't have elections because that's how they do it. They're in a state of war. That's how their government's set up. When they're in a state of war, they don't do elections. Not even sure exactly how folks would get to the polls, but a lot of people in America are like, well, he's a dictator. So they're supporting the things that are extraneous that Donald Trump says, who is hyperbolic. And so you've got one side, that's doing that it's supporting everything Donald Trump says is gospel. And even Donald Trump is like, well, I wouldn't take it as gospel, And so this is, so you got to let Zelensky be Zelensky, and you got to let him stand up for the Ukrainian people. At the same time, he can hate Putin and Russia all he wants, but we're not going to say anything bad about Putin and Russia. And the reason we're not going to do that is because even though we know that Putin is a dictator, he's been the same president for like 20 some years. It's amazing. It's amazing. Talk about a dictator. We know that. And we know that he's an evil man and that he has people put in prison and killed and does maybe all these things, right? We all know that. You know that. I know that. If you didn't know that, I just told you. And yet, so he was like, we want Trump to say it on television. Yeah. So why? So that Putin doesn't do what we want him to do either. We want him to give some of the land back. Ukraine's not going to get all the land back. The Donbass region, they speak Russian. A lot of them consider themselves to be Russian. There's a lot going on over there. It's not our fight. So the goal is to get some of Ukraine back to Ukraine, and Ukraine also holds some of Russia. So Ukraine's going to give up some of Russia's land. It's going to be like one of these very popular hostage negotiation situations where we, maybe you give back. It's kind of one-sided. It seems like everything that we were doing with negotiations, whether it's, with Russia getting DOD educators back or what's going on with Palestinians, Hamas, and the exchanges with Israel, it seems like we're going to give you, 100 of your guys so that we can get 3 of our people back, and that is kind of probably what it's going to be like with Russia and Ukraine. Ukraine's going to probably have to give all of the stuff that they took, land that they are currently holding in Russia. They're going to have to give that back. And then, Russia's going to give some of the Donbass region back. Some of it. Not all of it. They won't. I guarantee it. And also, Ukraine's not going to be a part of NATO. That's just not going to happen. Again, in my opinion, it jumps back to the fact that nobody respects Russia. The Europeans have held their tiny little teacups with their pinky sticking out, looking down their long noses at Russia for centuries, and Putin, like probably many Russians, just don't really appreciate being second-class citizens in the eyes of Western Europe. When Putin had this enormous conversation with an unnecessary, I don't know what Tucker Carlson's deal is. I guess he loves Russia. I don't know what his deal is. A lot of people follow Tucker Carlson. I think that he's an intelligent person. He's interesting. He seems kind of smarmy. And he always looks like he's in pain when he's about to ask a question, like he's really pushing a thought out. But I know he's an intelligent person. I liked him when he had the bow tie on back in the younger days. I don't dislike him, but I'm just, I'm like, I don't care if you go to Russia. They did. New York Times did that, or whenever Life or whatever, some magazine, whoever it was in the 50s, they went over to, Russia as well. And like, look, communism is great. And they showed them all the good stuff. And I know that Tucker Carlson's kind of an outdoorsman, so he could have trudged around, out in the hinterlands of Russia and maybe gotten a little different perspective. But he stuck around Moscow and did stuff like that, and that's fine. He had this long conversation with Vladimir Putin, and it was long because of Vladimir Putin, who, if you give him a microphone, much like me, I suppose, he'll ramble on. And he started to answer Tucker Carlson's first question. It was like a 30-minute answer, and it started like in, I don't know, 900 AD, somewhere in that range, 1100 AD. And now we join Tucker Carlson with his special exclusive interview with Vladimir Putin.
So I'll allow myself to spend a minute to give you a reference note, a debriefing, if you don't mind that.
Please.
Well, look, our relationship with Ukraine, what was the starting point of the relationship? Where does Ukraine come from? The Russian state became centralized, which was the year of establishment of the Russian state in 862, when, there's a city of Novgorod in the northwest of Russia, when they invited Prince Rurik from Scandinavia, from the Vikings, in 862. In 1862, 1,000 years since the establishment of the statehood was marked. And there is a...
Good Lord. And Putin's point was that the Russians are essentially Scandinavian to a certain degree. right? There's the high plains and the steppes and the Mongols and then the Vikings. The river people is what Russian means. Rusk. It means they're the river people, and the Vikings would roll on down through the rivers, deep into Russia, into Moscow, and they would, do what Vikings do. Rape, conquer, pillage, never win a Super Bowl, all of that stuff. Those are the things that happened. And it did happen in that 900 to 1100, AD period. And so that's what, back to that time, 1,000 years ago, this is how far Putin's memory and understanding of his own nation's history goes and his own people's history. And so he's like saying, well, we're just as European as the Western Europeans are, because England as it is today and Ireland as it is today and all of the Scandinavian countries and most of northern Germany and they've all been infiltrated by the Vikings in that same period, that 900 to 1100 period. Normandy on France, the western side of Norman just means Northman. There's Viking influences there too. The Vikings had a good couple of centuries. And then they got Christianized, and that settled them down quite a bit. And then they became Lutheranized, and that settled them down so much that a whole lot of Norwegians just left Norway and Swedes, right, and came to America and carried on the old-fashioned traditions that nobody in Scandinavia follows anymore. So keep at it, Decora. But anyway, this idea that Putin has, it stretches back, a millennia about who the Russian people are, and in his mind, just as much European. And Russia believes that, and they also know that they are, like I said, they're like the poorest cousins of Europe. And he explains it that way. So how is it not obvious to the news-watching world that part of Russia's problem is that they don't trust Europe? And maybe they don't trust the United States, although one could argue that the United States and Russia in the last 70 years have had a fairly decent relationship in the perspective that we had lots of treaties with each other, and we only fought our wars through proxy in poor states, poor countries, right? We never did it in person, except play cat and mouse in the North Atlantic with submarines and whatnot. So in Putin's mind, you can't trust the Europeans, and they're fairly, kind of guileless and maybe, I don't want to say gutless, because we have a lot of allies in Europe, but in his opinion, they are kind of gutless. And he doesn't think that the United States is gutless at all. But he already knows what he has been able to do in Ukraine, and now he does have some things he can give back. And he could give, some of this back, and he could get his part of the country back. And both of these leaders, Zelensky and Putin, can walk away from this situation, and they both look fairly good in their people's eyes, And so that's kind of what Trump is doing here. He, if nothing else, as a deal maker, I do believe that Donald Trump understands how to, read people. And he understands that Zelensky is going to come to the United States. He's going to pan for the cameras like he always does. He's an actor. But so is Donald Trump to a certain extent. He's a TV personality. And one could argue he's a far more successful TV personality than Zelensky ever was. And he understands ratings, and he understands good TV. In fact, at the end of the interview, after it all blew up, the president said, "That's going to make good TV, I'll tell you that."
Hey folks, this is Troy Thompson, and I just wanted to break in here. Now, as you know, we are not monetized. However, you can buy us a coffee. There'll be a little emblem that says you can support the show on whichever platform it is that you are listening to the Sunny Side of Life, and I would be darn honored if you bought me a coffee, so to speak. Or, I think the emblem, I changed it to a beer, which seems, to be honest, probably more appropriate. So buy me a coffee, buy me a beer, whatever it is, and that helps support the show so we can continue to develop more and more great skits and have more and more great conversations just like this. And if you do, great. If you don't, that's just fine too. Just wanted to let you know. Now back to the show. Zelensky will clown around in front of the camera. He makes lots of facial expressions. Part of it could be that he's trying to understand, English as it comes at him from, at different speeds. He speaks English very well, but there is a little bit of a language barrier there, and he's listening and he's communicating and he's answering, and he's unapologetic about not liking Putin and that there is more to it than Zelensky asserts that he has to have weapons to be able to back up the promises. And what I believe we're saying as a nation is that, well, if you make this deal, since we've given you $350 billion and you want more support, then we're gonna do this with this rare earth deal that Trump has worked out, which apparently Zelensky is ready to go with. And that's what they were supposed to sign on Friday. It wasn't the peace accords. It wasn't military support. It wasn't any of that stuff. It was just like, we're going to get a deal on rare earth. And that's going to help us offset the costs by helping you develop your infrastructure, which is war-torn. And we're going to be able to recoup some of this money that we've given you. That's Trump's perspective. And I don't disagree with that. We're not an ATM for the world. And if you look at Europe for the last 70 years, they took full advantage of the fact that the United States of America would absolutely cover their butts from the Russian hordes. And so he's looking at this as a business opportunity. I don't disagree with that. I don't know if we need the rare earth minerals. We have quite a vast amount of resources ourselves here. They also have some, petroleum and gas and coal. They have coal. We have all that stuff too. But it's a way for us to recoup some of that loss. It's a way for us to develop in that part of the world, to get our companies, American companies, developing those type of things. It takes some of the pressure off of our technology companies so that they can maybe have resources at a better price so that we can advance at a faster rate than China, who seems to own most of the rare earth minerals in the rest of the world by exploiting the Congo and other parts of the Central America, South America, and all over the place. So there's definitely some advantages to that, if nothing else, than to bring down the prices of say oil, petroleum, rare earth minerals, whatever it happens to be. But the fact that we're going to have investments over there, the fact that we've got Americans working over there developing infrastructure for these rare earth minerals, that's like, you're not going to be a member of NATO, but you can be darn sure that Vladimir Putin isn't going to be rolling across, blowing up our U.S. investments. He's brazen. He's bold. He wants to be respected. He's Russian to the core, but he's not stupid, right? So I think that's what Trump is trying to say. And Zelensky has been pretty successful since the war started, pretty much telling the president of the United States of America what he needs and what he's going to get. And then I think where it all blew up, besides making faces at the camera and arguing a little bit, I think it blew up when so Trump invited Marco Rubio to speak first. He talked to then Rubio did some, he always has good things to say, smart guy. Then it's almost like Trump it turns to JD Vance and says, hey, JD, why don't you say some very harsh things, and then JD Vance jumps in and with his Yale degree and does a great job doing that. And I think that Zelensky took some umbrage with the fact that he was talking to a vice president, which still is the second most powerful person in the world, in my opinion. And so that puts him pretty far up above the chain of the order of existence than the president of Ukraine. But I think he took some umbrage with that and didn't like it. And he kind of, his facial expressions and his tone changed. And what I noticed when that happened is that's when the meeting went south. And it isn't because of J.D. Vance talking. It was because of the message that Vance was expressing, and also I think that Zelensky was getting a little bit irritated with why am I talking to you? Why am I talking to your Secretary of State? I'm the president, and this is the president. We're co-equals. And Trump was, for the most part, for the whole meeting, pretty kind. The mouth breather reporter, whoever that guy was, that stood up and asked the dumb question of why don't you wear a suit? What don't you think it would be is disrespectful to not wear a suit? And Zelensky's always kind of, it's kind of his outfit, right? That's what he does. He's like, and he was, for a while, he looked like he was, in military uniform, like he was actually fighting a war. A lot of Democrats and people that are on the side of Ukraine wholly and can't stand Trump are committed to the idea that Zelensky is a modern day Churchill. He's nowhere near a Churchill. Not even close to a Churchill. He was a mediocre sitcom actor in the Ukraine before gaining some. It wasn't like it wasn't like Sir Winston Churchill in his teens and 20s and 30s, and who suffered incredible embarrassment because of his failed efforts in World War I, and then built his career on the world's greatest comeback. So if there's kind of a political comeback here, it's probably more Trump than it is Zelensky, who hasn't necessarily experienced that comeback on a Churchillian level. But a lot of people, consider him to be just like Winston Churchill, who did also dress in uniform, but that's a British thing. Like they're all, I think, when the island starts getting assaulted, they all put on a uniform. So that's this. When Vance got going, then Zelensky takes umbrage with it, and then I noticed that, and so that's when Trump turned up the volume. That's when it's almost like Trump's fine if you're dealing with him. He'll talk back, but he was pretty calm in this entire situation, I feel. And that when it's like, oh, you think you're going to talk to my vice president like that? No. You don't tell me anything. And that's very important for people to understand. Like, who's the boss here? We do not need Ukraine. And I think what was being said is Zelensky is trying to say and has said that American soldiers are going to come over and they're going to die and fight for Ukraine, and then you will feel the pain, you will feel it across your oceans and all of that. And Trump's like, don't tell us what we're going to feel. And to put this into perspective, we don't need Ukraine. It sucks for the people of Ukraine. I feel for the people. That's terrible. It's also not my fight. And you know what? Countries do change hands, maybe not as often as they used to, but throughout human history, they change all the time. Cultures take over other cultures. I don't say it's a good thing, but it does happen, and it's a part of human history, and it's part of today. The United States is not responsible for that. And Western Europe is more responsible for that than the United States is, and the fact that Europe has been supporting Ukraine, that's what they should be doing. Like, they should be providing the support. Why? Because they need a buffer in their brains between Western Europe and Russia. The reason they're not going to be that Ukraine won't be a part of NATO ever is because Russia needs a buffer in their brains between Europe. And so the Balkan states, those old Soviet satellite nations, those, Ukraine, all of these places, they're not necessarily going to be satellite republics, and they don't want to be satellite republics or satellite nations of Russia, but they're not going to be part of NATO. The best that they could do is allow a lot of U.S. investment and Western European investment, and because of that, look, money talks, and so nobody likes losing money and interest. And the people that own those big companies, those are the same people that are paying all sides of the aisle in every country anyway. So it's a little banana republic-y, but that's just kind of how the world works. So the goal is to not have this war going on anymore. That's what Trump really cares about. And his point to Zelensky was real simple. We don't have to do anything. And whether or not you have a nation is with or without our support is really not our problem. It's not a good situation. We want the war to end. We think you want the war to end. But if we say 100% that Putin and Russia are the bad guy, and we all know that they should not have invaded. But if we say that, we're not going to get anything back in this situation. And it's going to empower you to think then that you can just go out and you're going to get whatever you want. You're going to have all the support that you want, and you can fight. And that's not what Trump's goal is. Trump's goal is to end the war. And that should be everybody's goal. So this idea that we're going to go and get, Ukraine's going to be restored to its proper borders is not going to happen. It's not going to happen because Ukraine can't do it. And we're not going to invest treasure or any more treasure or lives than that. We're going to end this war, and I'm in favor of that because it seems like the people that are the most interested in perpetuating this total victory for Ukraine are not the people that are the kind that are trained to use a weapon or wear body armor or fight in a war anyway. So I'm just not convinced that there's much merit to suburbanite interest in total victory for Ukraine. We can all agree that Russia is, that Putin particularly, that Putin is not a good person, but he's in control of Russia, and he is doing what I guess what you would say, putting Russia first, and we're putting America first. We do not have much of a dog in this fight. We've got $350 billion of our money that we've spent to support Ukraine, and Zelensky will come over and he will clown in front of the cameras and make his statements, and then wear his little his jogging pants or sweatsuit or whatever he's wearing, and that's fine. I guess that's what I kind of expected Eastern European folks to look like. Put on like an Adidas jumpsuit and look like a sort of a 1980s, late 80s, early 90s rapper, and be comfortable. Maybe add some jewelry to it, and run a country, answer to oligarchs, all of that stuff, but. I don't really care what he was wearing. And even Trump said after that idiotic, question from the mouth-breathing reporter about the suit, he says, I think he looks fine. He looks, this is what he wears. Obviously, Trump cares very much what people wear. He's always been a suit and tie guy, even when he wears a hard hat or that ridiculous trucker hat that has MAGA on it. There's just, those are, I don't like, I think that it's a popular look for like half the country, but, for a guy that builds really nice hotels, and I've stayed in some of them, they're fantastic. And like he really pays attention to detail. He really understands, how to make a resort or a hotel or a golf course, a development beautiful. He picked some of the ugliest hats I've ever seen. But maybe he's a marketing genius. I don't know. It's not my thing. He'll wear that with the suit, which is a look. Anyway, everything blew up after Zelensky responded harshly to Vance, who had spoken, laid out things, and then Trump said, "You're not gonna tell us how we're gonna feel." And the point being, like, you don't have any of those cards. He kept saying that over and over. You don't hold any of the cards. We've got all the cards. Without us, you have no cards. And that's correct. You know, he thinks he's got cards with the Europeans, and the Europeans will support him. They have to. Financially, they have to, because they're using Ukraine as a buffer state. And Zelensky knows that Western Europe needs to have him as a buffer between Russia. He knows that Europe doesn't like Russia, that they've never seen them as an equal, that they've always been able to clown them off as the great enemy. And for a long time, as the Soviet Union, I would say that they were, because they did terrible things. That's what communists do. They do terrible things, and millions of people die. And so there's no hero in the history of Stalinism or Khrushchev or Brezhnev or any of these guys. You know, and certainly not Putin. But the people of Russia are like any other country. They just want to go on with their lives. Also, Russia can't afford to continue fighting this war. And they may be the scorched earth type of historical war fighters that will just, you know, like I said, go to the last bullet and the last bean. But they have the GDP of like Texas, you know, so like they're not this enormously wealthy country. Reagan knew that. He broke them financially. They were paying their people in vodka, for crying out loud, as Soviets. That's what communism does. And then, of course, socialists always say they just didn't do it right. It's always the same result. But there's no way that Putin can continue to fight this war. He's looking for an out as well. He can save some face. Trump knows that. He's not going to talk smack about him when he's sitting there with Zelensky. So Zelensky think, you know, like he's their buddy. They're not buddy. In fact, I think that was some of what Trump was doing in the week or two before, where he was calling Zelensky a dictator. And then he said to the press when they asked him about that, he said, "Did I say that? I don't think I said that." So he knows he's hyperbolic. And he probably does know that he says that. But he also knows that he says a lot of things that are just like, he's like a real estate agent, you know. Isn't this beautiful? It's the most beautiful house you'll ever. It's the most beautiful view. It's the the best in the world. No, it's like, we're used to it. And I got to give, I mean, I do understand Zelensky. Like some of those facial expressions I was also making, because even though I'm on the side of Trump in this case, and I really never was worried that it was going to work out, I just figured this is going to work out. I'm not worried about it. The sky's not falling. It's way more fun for the media folk to get all wrapped up in arms about this. But I too was making some of those faces that Zelensky was. You know, the facial expression that's just like, wait, what? What is he talking about? Why is he talking about that kind of facial expression? That happened a few times, or maybe many times, because Trump can't stay focused. Trump can't stay on topic. He'll start talking about, he knows what he wants to say, and then he'll say, and by the way, as I've said before, this war never would have started if I'd been elected. And it's like irrelevant. So it's like irrelevant, Don, irrelevant.
I really don't know what he said at the end of that sentence. I don't think he knows what he said either.
I'm DJ Trump, and I'm like a really smart person. I'm very intelligent. Vote for me for president. I know words. I have the best words. You know I'm very rich. I'm not a politician. We're gonna build a wall, illegal alien prohibition. We're gonna win so much, you're gonna be amazed. Took a bullet to the ear, and I wasn't even phased. Lady, you're fired, you're out, I'm hired. Make America great again. I can stand in the middle of Fifth Avenue, shoot somebody and I wouldn't lose any voters. I know more about ISIS than the generals do. Trump flags for homes, for cars, and for all those voters. Fake news is the enemy of the people. The system is rigged, fake news tricks the sheeple. I have a very good brain and I've said a lot of things, own the best hotels and rock the boxing ring. We're gonna win so much, you're gonna be amazed. Took a bullet to the ear, and I wasn't even phased. Lady, you're fired, you're out, I'm hired. Make America great again.
I'm not a threat to democracy at all. They are a threat to democracy. I'm the one that fixed our military. I'm the one that knocked out ISIS. I'm the one. I did so much. I also took a bullet.
Fake news is the enemy of the people. The system is rigged, fake news tricks the sheeple. I have a very good brain and I've said a lot of things on the best hotels and rock the boxing ring. We're gonna win so much, you're gonna be amazed. Took a bullet to the ear, and I wasn't even phased. Lady, you're fired, you're out, I'm higher. Make America great again.
From today and from the day I take the oath of office, we will rapidly drive prices down and make America affordable again. We're going to make it affordable again.
You're done. Like you won the presidency. You're in the White House again. You're making incredible things happen in a short period of time, but you just can't stop, smelling your own brand. And that is, I think that's part of Zelensky's frustration. He's like, with Biden, he couldn't remember who I was, and so I could, act myself this way. I could be this way in front of the cameras and I could try to get my way. And then I think now he's sitting there and he's legitimately confused, but like, this guy won't stop talking about himself. Like he keeps jumping back to things that are almost like campaign trail stuff. And I had another guy talking about this on Saturday night. I was talking to a guy and he's like, maybe Trump knows that he can't stay on task with a topic for very long. Like maybe he knows that about himself. And I thought that's very interesting. So maybe that's why he's got, a Rubio and a Vance there this time that are like just attack dogs. And Vance isn't going to miss. Like he is a pro. He says he almost answers everything perfectly all the time. Whether you like what he says or not, that's your that's your political bent. But if in an argument, JD Vance is going to smoke you. And so I think Trump knows that. And I think, and I hadn't thought of that perspective. So credit to Cody Likey there for saying, hey, maybe Trump knows that he's not that able to stay on task, and maybe that's why he's got these guys with him, because they will take care of it for him, and then that'll turn him around and he can get back on to the next thing. I think that's very interesting because back in 2016, one of the things that I was so excited about Trump was, and I was one of the earliest supporters of Trump back in 2016, and spoke for him at the little county convention that we had when there was like 11 people running for the office at that time in the caucuses, and it's like, I thought that one of the fascinating features of Donald Trump, because of The Apprentice, and then I'd read, his book, The Art of the Deal, as a adolescent, for crying out loud, was that I thought he knew how to hire people. Like that's the whole motif, that he knew how to hire good people. And then his first term happened, and it was evident that I doubt it. Like he hardly hired any of the right people. And then what if he had one in 2020? He gripes about it all the time, and people were upset about it, and people are still. You should be thanking God that Trump didn't win in 2020, because it took him this long to figure out exactly how he wants to do it. And that's not because it takes him a long time to figure things out. He has assembled a team that is going to get things done, and he's got his opposition just spinning in circles. So if you're a Trump supporter, you should stop whining about 2020 when he lost the election. It wasn't necessarily always fair. In a lot of states, it wasn't fair. Like we can all agree with that. And there was all kinds of pressure from the media and hidden things. Like we know all of that stuff. But at the end of the day, Joe Biden won the election, like it or not. And we should be thanking God that that's the case, because now he knows, like he's just coming in like a whirlwind in a tornado. It would not have been that way if he didn't get a break. He spent all that time, running for office. And then we had such a terrible presidency under Joe Biden. And then we were so obvious that there was a situation that there was a dude who was in office that wasn't competent, that it made this transition a little bit easier. And he's a lame duck. And so that makes some people's eyes roll, like he's like, oh, he will probably run again. He'll claim himself, like that's not going to happen. All right. So it's a situation where this time he actually has, in my opinion, hired all the right people, or most of the right people. Anyway, we'll go with that. We'll see how it turns out. But that's why they were there. And I think that they kind of knew that it was going to happen. They knew Zelensky was going to come in. He was going to parade himself in front of the camera. He's going to make his facial expressions. He's going to do what he's always done with Biden. He's going to do all of that stuff. And the next thing is that they pistol whipped him right in front of God and everybody. What you got to do sometimes. Sometimes you got to do that, and there's nothing Zelensky could do about it. And it's not World War III. It's not World War III because World War III isn't started by Ukraine. It's started by Russia, right? That's who pushes the button. They would rather push the button and end it rather than, suffer the defeat of embarrassment, all right? Zelensky can suffer some embarrassment. That's the reality. And Trump knows that. Zelensky needs the United States against Russia. The Europeans need the United States because they've got 70-year history of letting us do the heavy lifting. So at the end of the day, Trump was right. He did hold the cards. And now we know that deal is going to go through. Now, that's not the deal to, troops on the ground. It's not, there's probably some more support militarily, but you're not going to fight on forever. Trump does want to get this over. We'll see what he does with Putin next. And it doesn't mean that it doesn't mean that Trump is a plant for the Russians. That's so stupid. It can't take people seriously. It's like they almost don't know history or something like that. I see no evidence of that whatsoever. However, I think that there is going to be peace. It's not going to. The borders aren't going to look the same. There's going to be some changes there. There's going to be some infrastructure. There's going to be some development. There's going to be a chance for the Ukrainian people and the Russian people to go back to business, whatever their business may have been, and not on the dime of the United States dollar. They should be able to rebuild their nation. And I think that's part of saving money. That's part of putting America first is to help resolve these issues without just throwing cash at people. Throwing cash at things is the politicians' answer for decades, maybe even centuries. I don't know. It seems like in the last, 100 years, we've just been fine with throwing money at the problem, whatever the problem happens to be. If we had more money, if it's war, if it's healthcare, if it's education, people's solution is we just need more money. We hear economic wizards who are anything but claim that Elon Musk has got all this money and he could just end hunger. But with the money he has, he could just end hunger. I don't know if they think that they understand how hunger works, but you don't eat dollar bills. So there's in the same way that there is probably a more complex and nuanced situation regarding hunger in the world. This is a complex and nuanced situation, not to sound like John Kerry. But the fact of the matter is, the West doesn't respect Russia, treats them like a dirty cousin, and second rate, have for a long time. They are poor because they were communists, which is what you get from communism, Bernie Sanders, and they're upset about it. But it was like that before the Russian Revolution, right? So they were not treated with a lot of respect before then, and they don't like that. And for that reason, they don't trust Europe. Now, we are separated by an ocean on both sides, which is very convenient, and it lets us be a little bit of a mediator here. Plus, we have the biggest checkbook, and we've got some fantastic weapons. So, as we've learned, Zelensky, he's going to walk away from this with a good deal. It's going to stop the war. He's not going to get all of his land back, but he's going to prevent any more Ukrainians from, hopefully, well, this is the idea anyway, from dying. And he should be interested in that. That's
I mean, or remember the Alamo. And as Trump said after the the busted meeting on, I guess after like Zelensky wanted to come back in, but then they wouldn't have him come back in. I don't know what the whole details were, but apparently he had staff eat Zelensky's lunch that was made for him. It was all this other stuff. And when Trump came out and did his interview afterwards, he was kind of fired up. He's just saying, let him see what happens. Let him see. Good luck winning the war without us. And that's the brass tacks, isn't it? Good luck doing it without us. And so Trump wasn't offering our soldiers, wasn't necessarily offering any military aid, wasn't offering any money, saying we're going to do this deal, which is all about rare earth. And that's what we're going to do first. So you get that out of the way, and then they can figure out the details, which is going to, I think, result in peace, which both sides need desperately. If not their political leaders and their egos, including our own political leaders and their egos, it's definitely what the people want. Peace. That's what we should all want. So very interesting, and a heck of a way to start the fourth season, talking about international politics. There's going to be more of this, and there's going to be more hyperbole. And my advice to you would be, take it easy on the news cycle. Take it easy on social media. I don't have a very strong social media presence whatsoever because I'm healthy, and I think that it's good for you to put your phone down, not check your email. Do what I do. Make a resolution here at the beginning of the fourth season of Sunnyside. Check your email like twice a day. If you can get away with it. I know that your boss thinks that you need to check it every email. Have you ever gotten an email and then gotten a phone call like 5 minutes after the email since you see that email I sent? No. It's easier for me to say I'm retired, so I check my emails. I get lots of emails too, and I'm in all kinds of different committees and all of this other stuff. I'll check my email in the morning. I'll check it at night, and in the middle of the day, since I'm not in charge of world peace, pretty sure there's just no email that's going to come through that I need to read at that very moment. I also have a very bad habit of not answering my phone, which my wife and my kids are not real happy with. My ringer is almost never on. And that's how you stay healthy. Hopefully we can say and show you more things about the sunny side of life and what we've got going on here very shortly with some cool videos. We've got some cool projects going on, including installing a gym floor in the barn, which we've been waiting to do for quite a while. So look for those videos. More to come, more to follow. Thanks for paying attention and listening to the sunny side of life. If you've just joined us, go back and feel free to listen to all the other episodes. Some are better than others. We've got more interviews lined up in this fourth season and more commentary as things get better. So that's it. Until next time, I hope you lay off the phone, the social media, the emails, spend some time reading, enjoying yourself, doing something worthwhile, keeping your hands busy and calloused and being useful. And most importantly, being the sunny side of someone else's life.
When the shadows fall and doubts begin to creep, remember together we're strong, never weak. Lift your neighbor up with kindness every day. Let your actions speak the words you want to say.
The Sunny Side of Life is a weekly production about our life on the family farmstead here in Iowa, the liberties we prize, and the pursuits which make us happy. None of this is possible, of course, without Christ in our lives. For the Lord God is our sun and our shield. He gives us grace and glory.
Be the sunny side of someone else's life. Share your light and joy through struggle and strife. Keep your heart open and your soul always bright. Together we will share this sunny side life. Be the sunny side of someone else's life. Share your light and joy through struggle and strife. Keep your heart open and your soul always bright. Together we will share this sunny side life.
May the Lord bless you and keep you, and may the sunny side of your life in Christ be made evident unto you each and every day and give you peace.